In 2002, Rich Gannon wasn't just good, he was unstoppable. 37 years old, journeyman label, former backup, cast aside by multiple teams, and suddenly, NFL MVP, 5,000 passing yards, league leader in completions, leader of the most explosive offense in football, and the face of the Raiders returned to dominance. But 1 year later, he was broken. 2 years later, he was gone. And today, most casual fans barely remember how dominant he truly was. This is the story of the Raiders quarterback who delivered one perfect season, then was erased. Before 2002, Rich Gannon wasn't a superstar. He wasn't a golden draft pick. He wasn't marketed as a franchise savior. In fact, he spent the early part of his career bouncing around the league. Minnesota, Washington, Kansas City. Each stop came with opportunity. Each stop ended with doubt. Coaches didn't trust him fully. Fans didn't believe in him fully. He was labeled solid, serviceable, limited upside. That label stuck for years, until Jon Gruden saw something different. When Gannon arrived in Oakland in 1999, something clicked. The Raiders were unconventional, creative, rebellious. They thrived on veterans who had something to prove. Gannon fit perfectly. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't physically overwhelming, but he was precise, fearless, hyper-competitive. And by 2000, he was already elevating the Raiders into contenders. But 2002, that was different. The 2002 Raiders offense was revolutionary for its time. Spread formations, quick timing routes, option reads, pre-snap adjustments. And Rich Gannon controlled all of it. He wasn't just running plays, he was orchestrating them. Audibles at the line, reading defensive leverage, identifying mismatches instantly. The ball came out fast, accurate, relentless. There's a Monday Night Football game that season that defines him. Down early, defense struggling, crowd tense. Gannon doesn't panic. He increases tempo, hits short routes, moves the chains, spreads the defense wide, then strikes deep. Touchdown. The sideline ignites. By the fourth quarter, the defense is exhausted. He finishes with over 350 yards. Another win. Another masterclass. Statistically, it was absurd. 4,689 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. League MVP. At 37 years old. He wasn't supposed to peak at 37. Quarterbacks declined by then. Instead, Gannon looked sharper than ever. The Raiders finished 11-5, AFC champions, Super Bowl bound, and for the first time in decades, the Raiders felt inevitable. But here's what made that season feel perfect. It wasn't just numbers, it was rhythm. Everything aligned, offensive line cohesive, Jerry Rice and Tim Brown running surgical routes, Charlie Garner explosive out of the backfield, Bill Callahan's offense built for Gannon's brain. The chemistry was electric. Gannon wasn't just executing, he was dictating. Defenses couldn't disguise coverage long enough. Blitzes rarely landed clean. He saw everything, and that's what made him dangerous. The AFC Championship game against Tennessee sealed his legacy. Over 280 passing yards. Clinical execution. No fear, no hesitation. Silver and black confetti fell. Rich Gannon, once a journeyman, was now an MVP quarterback leading the Raiders to the Super Bowl. It felt poetic, it felt redemptive, it felt like destiny. And then came Super Bowl XXXV, the matchup that still haunts Raiders fans. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coached by Jon Gruden, the man who built that Raiders offense, the man who knew Gannon's tendencies, the man who understood every audible, every signal, every protection shift. It was the worst possible matchup, and it showed. Tampa Bay's defense was historically great, fast, disciplined, aggressive. They anticipated everything. They jumped routes, disguised coverage, applied pressure perfectly. Gannon threw 5 interceptions, 3 returned for touchdowns. The Raiders lost 48-21, and the perfect season ended brutally. But here's the thing, one bad Super Bowl doesn't erase an MVP season. Plenty of great quarterbacks lose on the biggest stage. They bounce back, recalibrate, return stronger. That's what everyone expected from Gannon in 2003. Instead, everything collapsed. Week 7 of the 2003 season. Gannon takes a brutal hit from Tampa Bay defensive tackle Derek Brooks. Shoulder injury, severe, season-ending. But it wasn't just a simple setback. The injury lingered, surgery complicated recovery, arm strength diminished, confidence shaken. He tried returning in 2004, but the explosiveness was gone. the velocity weaker, the timing off, and in the NFL, milliseconds matter. The Raiders, once explosive, fell apart. Coaching instability, roster decline, front office turmoil. The structure that made 2002 perfect was gone. And without that ecosystem, Gannon couldn't replicate magic. By 2005, he was effectively finished. Released, career over. Quietly. No farewell tour, no prolonged decline. Just an abrupt ending. And that's what makes it feel like erasure. Because outside of Raiders fans, Rich Gannon rarely appears in all-time conversations. He's not constantly referenced in MVP debates. He's not marketed in NFL retrospectives. His 2002 season isn't replayed the way other MVP seasons are. It's almost like that year existed in isolation, like a glitch in history. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The 2002 Raiders were built around one fragile alignment. A veteran quarterback peaking late, an offensive system tailored perfectly to his strengths, elite route runners, precise timing. When that alignment broke, so did the magic. And that raises the real question. Was Rich Gannon a product of system, or was the system a product of him? Because that 2002 offense didn't function the same without him, and he never functioned the same without that version of it. He went from MVP to sidelined in under 2 seasons. From face of the franchise to forgotten footnote. From perfect season to painful ending. Almost overnight. And maybe that's why his story feels erased, because it doesn't fit the usual arc. There was no decade of dominance, no slow fade, no Hall of Fame campaign, just one perfect storm of timing, talent, and trust, and then silence. When Rich Gannon's shoulder gave out in 2003, it didn't just injure a quarterback, it shattered an ecosystem. Because the 2002 Raiders weren't just talented, they were synchronized, every route timed to Gannon's release, every protection call tailored to his pre-snap reads, every audible built on years of trust and rhythm. When his arm strength dipped even slightly, that timing vanished. And without timing, that offense wasn't revolutionary, it was exposed. The NFL doesn't wait for recovery, it replaces. In 2004, Gannon tried to return. You could see the competitiveness, the preparation, the leadership still intact. But the velocity wasn't the same. Deep outs floated, tight windows closed faster, defenders reacted quicker. And in this league, a half-second delay is the difference between completion and interception. The Raiders organization was unraveling too. John Gruden was gone. Bill Callahan was gone. The front office was unstable. The roster aged rapidly. Jerry Rice eventually departed. Tim Brown moved on. The line regressed. What made 2002 magical wasn't just Gannon's brain. It was alignment. And alignment had fractured. By 2005, Rich Gannon was released. No dramatic press conference. No grand farewell. Just a transaction. A name removed from the roster. He retired quietly. Became a broadcaster. Analyzed the same game he once controlled. And the league moved on. Quickly. But here's where the erased feeling sets in. Go ask a casual NFL fan today about the greatest MVP seasons of the 2000s. You'll hear names like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Kurt Warner, maybe even LaDainian Tomlinson. Rarely does Rich Gannon enter that conversation. And that's strange, because statistically, 2002 was historic. At age 37, he led the league in passing yards, led the league in completions, led the most innovative offense in football, won MVP, took his team to the Super Bowl. That's not a fluke season, that's dominance. But history is selective, and perception is powerful. The Super Bowl loss against Tampa Bay changed everything. 5 interceptions, 3 returned for touchdowns, a blowout loss on the biggest stage. For many fans, that became the defining image. Not the 11 regular season wins, not the MVP trophy, not the AFC championship, just the interceptions. And narratives stick harder than numbers. What many forget is context. John Gruden had built that Raiders offense. He knew every audible, every signal, every protection adjustment. Tampa Bay's defense anticipated the playbook because they had lived inside it. It wasn't just physical domination, it was informational advantage. But nuance doesn't survive highlight reels. 5 interceptions became the headline, and headlines shape legacy. There's another uncomfortable truth. Gannon didn't have the traditional superstar profile. He wasn't drafted high. He didn't have a cannon arm. He wasn't marketed heavily. He didn't win multiple rings. His dominance came late, at 37. That makes it harder to romanticize, because the NFL prefers long arcs, dynasties, sustained dominance, not one perfect eruption. And that's what 2002 was, a perfect eruption. Everything aligned at once: veteran leadership, perfectly tailored system, elite route runners, healthy offensive line, and a quarterback with unmatched command of that structure. When even one of those pieces shifted, the magic vanished. But erased doesn't mean irrelevant. Inside football circles, coaches still reference that Raiders offense: timing-based spread concepts, pre-snap autonomy, quarterback control at the line. Gannon was ahead of his time in certain ways. He wasn't physically overwhelming. He won with processing speed, with anticipation, with mental command. That style now defines modern quarterback play. But in 2002, it felt unique. There's a clip from an interview years later where Gannon reflects on that season. He doesn't sound bitter. He doesn't complain about legacy. He simply says, "That was the best I've ever felt on a football field." And maybe that's the point. Not every legend gets 10 seasons of greatness. Some get one. One season where everything makes sense, where every read feels clear, where every throw leaves your hand exactly as intended, where the game slows down and the results explode. The Raiders never fully recovered from that collapse. The franchise entered years of instability, coaching changes, quarterback changes, roster rebuilds, and 2002 became a snapshot. Frozen, almost mythical, because it felt like a doorway that closed too quickly. Rich Gannon's career totals are solid, respectable, but not Hall of Fame overwhelming. And that's why history compresses him, because numbers across decades matter more than one eruption. But if you isolate 2002, it stands with any quarterback season of its era. And that's what makes it haunting. There was no slow decline, no 3-year fade, just peak, injury, and exit, almost overnight. Sometimes, legacy depends on timing. If Gannon wins that Super Bowl, his narrative changes forever. If his shoulder holds up one more season, maybe the Raiders stay contenders. If the organization remains stable, maybe he extends dominance. But sports aren't built on ifs. They're built on outcomes. And the outcome was abrupt. So was he erased? Not from record books, not from Raiders history, but from mainstream memory? Almost. Because he doesn't fit the archetype. He wasn't a dynasty quarterback. He wasn't a media magnet. He wasn't dominant for a decade. He was perfect once. And in the NFL, once is rarely enough to cement immortality. But Raiders fans remember. They remember the precision, the tempo, the calm confidence, the way defenses looked confused before the snap, the way comebacks felt methodical, not frantic, the way a 37-year-old quarterback controlled the league for one magical season. And maybe that's enough. Some players fade, some decline gradually, some burn out dramatically. Rich Gannon did something rarer. He peaked perfectly, then vanished quickly, leaving behind a season that feels almost unreal in hindsight. A season that deserves more recognition, more respect, more remembrance. Because in 2002, for 1 year, Rich Gannon wasn't a journeyman. He wasn't underrated. He wasn't system-dependent. He was the best quarterback in football. And sometimes, that's enough to be legendary, even if history tries to forget it.